Max Keiser of MaxKeiser.com is our guest for the rest of the hour. We're going to open the phones up for people specifically with questions for Max Keiser at the bottom of the hour. It's very simple. Less than 20 big central banks openly are setting up world governments saying we're going to pay our carbon taxes to them. They go into nations, set up these derivative systems to get people deeply in fraudulent debt. They want the resources of the nation. They pay off the politicians to buy into the Ponzi schemes. But instead of going to prison like Bernie Madoff or Ken Lay, when they implode the economy, they get even more power, and they use paramilitary, military-industrial complex systems and television brainwashing to play the public off against each other and to suppress and demonize anybody else that wakes up. But, Max, the reason I talk about myself here is that I have Time Magazine, New York Times, Newsweek, Southern Poverty Law Center. They called me today. They're doing a cover story on their intelligence report, demonizing me. They're misrepresenting who I am, what I stand for, what I'm doing. They're demonizing anybody that criticizes the banks as racist, which has nothing to do with it. They're making it about Obama, which is what they do. You know, the right wing makes it about Obama. The left wing makes it about the Republicans, to where, as you said, we're a circular firing line all shooting at each other. They've got the people shooting at each other. But then meanwhile, it's pretty creepy to now have the London Guardian and just New York Daily News, the Austin American Statesman, no exaggeration, 3 or 4 big publications a day saying I'm dangerous, I'm bad, Alex Jones has caused a huge psychosis globally. I mean, it's creeping my wife and I out. I mean, I can handle the heat in the kitchen, but I don't think of myself as that big. You had recognized previously, and I didn't get you on to talk about me, but I want your advice that I was super effective and that I was being mimicked, and you're more of a media expert than I. You've done it longer than I have. What do you say to what I'm saying here? Why do you think this is happening? Max Keiser's line dropped. I don't want to do Skype anymore, guys. Maybe a little bit better audio quality, but it just doesn't work to like foreign countries and places. So, and then we don't notice when the line drops. It's always good to ask a long question because, I mean, I'm here watching this happen. I'm watching this go on. I am seeing it, and I'm seeing myself being held up as the devil because I am identifying the banks as the enemy. I'm telling people, don't fight with Obama. Don't fight with the Republicans. The leadership is controlled by the same people. We have got to address the real issues, and we've got to do it now. And that's what Max Keiser's doing. Max Keiser, for several years on this show and his own television programs, has been identifying the real enemy. Max, why do you think, I don't know how much of my question you heard before your line dropped. I'm asking your advice. Why do you think the mainstream media is now identifying Alex Jones as this big #1 enemy?
It's because you're so handsome.
No, seriously, because you've been telling me on and off air for the last year or so that I was really having an effect, and I kind of put it off as you analyzing it. But I'm asking you now, why do you think this is happening?
Well, I mean, clearly as I've been saying, basically there's this credit crunch, there's a credit collapse. And no matter how much money they throw at it, they can't reinflate the bubble. They're trying to get the bubble going again. They can't do it. So, the people are they're looking for scapegoats. The classic propaganda model, going back, to World War II, is first you develop demagogues or and then you also develop scapegoats. So in Nazi Germany, for example, Hitler was the godlike figure. And the minorities that they choose were the scapegoats. Now, here we have Lloyd Blankfein over at Goldman Sachs saying he's doing God's work. He's clearly setting himself up as a demagogue. He's in touch with God. He's doing God's work. And for the propaganda model to work, he's got to have scapegoats.
And they give Al Gore awards. They give Obama awards for starting more wars, peace prizes. So that's the joke. They're God. We're bad.
You need a scapegoat for the propaganda model to work, because people need to love. They need to fall in love with their captor, and they need to hate somebody. So that's the way the propaganda model works. So in America right now, they're if you're the scapegoat, they need somebody to be the scapegoat. So I mean, but this is not unpredictable. I mean, this is the model that we're talking about, because since the credit collapse has eliminated the easy money, what we have now is this wholesale transference of wealth, what's left, into the pockets of the top 1%, and they have to do it in a way that everybody kind of thinks is acceptable, and they do this by scapegoating one portion of the population, by setting themselves up as God, and that they need to continue to transfer wealth to themselves because they need, and that's the model that we've seen before in history, and it's the model being used in the U.S. today.
Well, Max, I mean, you have always identified that the big power structure, Wall Street and others, are in control of both parties, and you've been identifying the banks, and you talk about the revolt against the banking global dictatorship gaining steam, but they've been more successful in the U.S. playing different political groups off against each other, divide and conquer. Specifically, though, what do you see unfolding in Iceland and in Greece? I mean, for those that don't know, over the weekend, Iceland voters reject repayment plan because it's a fraud.
Yeah, well, as these currencies, remember the Icelandic krona collapsed. I was in Reykjavik a year before the collapse. I was in the Hotel 101. I was sitting with bankers from what was still a viable firm, Lehman Brothers, and they told me that they were planning to attack the Icelandic krona using derivatives and other financial products, and that they were going to take the Icelandic economy down. I made a film at that time. I spoke to bankers. I told them, this economy is going to blow up in less than a year because you are in control of the speculators. You have lost control of your economy. And they laughed at me, and they said, no, that's impossible. And, of course, less than a year later, the krona collapsed, the Icelandic economy collapsed. Now we're seeing the same speculators move on to Greece and move on to the Eurozone, where they say to Greece, we're going to collapse your economy unless you give us some of your islands, unless you give us some of your tourist attractions, which we can securitize and turn into derivatives and trade with each other for next year's Christmas bonus. And if you don't do that, we're going to crash your economy. So they use these derivatives as basically weaponized financial products. We saw with Hank Paulson. He went to Congress and said, either give us $700 billion, remember at the end of 2008, either you give us $700 billion or we're going to crash your economy. Now that he held the Congress hostage. To me, I don't understand how he got away with holding the American Congress hostage like this and demanding $700 billion in ransom. They mean, the U.S. is crying about pirates in Somalia. What about the pirates on the floor right there in Congress? I mean, I don't understand the double standard there.
Well, you may have seen this. It just came out today, Atlantic Monthly, and I'll give folks a document cam shot of this. It says, a detention bill you ought to read more carefully. Again, that's Atlantic Monthly. Here's the PrisonPlanet.com article. Dissenters to be detained as enemy belligerents. This is a John McCain, Joseph Lieberman bill. It says the Enemy Belligerent Interrogation, Detention, and Prosecution Act of 2010 allows the holding of citizens inside the United States for any reason. Section 5, any matters as the president considers appropriate with no evidence of any crime being committed extrajudicially by the military. And then now Homeland Security's put out a training video of these mobile Homeland Security body scanning vans that will also brain scan you, and then they will claim with their quackery, just like the lie detector sent millions of innocent people to prison, they'll have some minimum wage TSA person say, this shows you're a terrorist. It tells of your lying, supposedly, and then you disappear. I mean, my God. I mean, I'm living in the running, man, Max. This is incredible.
Well, it's because they're broke. The easiest way to make money in the world is in the prison business. And we know that the prison business in the U.S. is thriving. The U.S. has the biggest prison population in the world. It's growing. The fastest minority in the United States in terms of growth is the prison population. We know that the private companies that own the prisons, they own the restaurants and the hotels that are located near the prisons. So when you go to visit your family in prison and you stay in the hotel and you eat in the restaurants, you're paying the same owner who owns the prison. We know that the prison owners lobby Washington to get laws passed to make it easier to put people into prison. And this is a huge money maker. It's the easy way to make money. You see, in the United States, unfortunately, they don't have enough self-confidence anymore to compete and do things like high technology and go to the moon. You know, the fact that Barack Obama canceled NASA and canceled all the space programs was really a shame because, you know, if it wasn't for NASA, if it wasn't for man landing on the moon in 1969, there would have been no Silicon Valley, there would have been no Google, there would have been no Microsoft, there would have been no Oracle software, there would have been no IBM doing the PC industry, there's no Apple computer. It was the cutting edge of a technological revolution based on the fact that everybody wanted to be an astronaut, and people wanted to get their science degrees, and America was competitive, and we were going to beat the Russians with Sputnik, and it was a very competitive society. But now, America's lost its will to compete.